Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. As you can probably tell, I'm fairly ill, so this video is going to be a little bit shorter than we're usually used to, but we are going to be going over the winners and losers of the Ashe patch, but also the stuff that is currently on the PTR, knowing full well in advance that these changes may not go through, especially the Brigitta one, since there's been a lot of blowback. We're going to be going through each of the heroes, not every single one of them, and how Ashe, the Roadhog changes, Symmetra changes, all that negatively or positively impact the game. Both the heroes that were nerfed or buffed themselves, but also interactions in the meta. Just to quickly go over all of the changes that will be referenced in this video, we have of course Ashe being added into the live servers, we have Mercy, her ultimate cost has been reduced by 15% and her heal per second has been increased for 50 to 60 whilst ulting. Reaper's spread randomization on his shotguns has been reduced by 50% and the spread pattern has been adjusted and made better. The Reaping passive, also the lifesteal on it, has been increased from 20% to 30% of his damage dealt. For Roadhog, it's chain hook. Effectively, it pulls the target a lot quicker, it reduces the momentum of the target that's been hooked, and the cooldown now begins immediately after you've hooked the target instead of when the target gets pulled to you. For Whole Hog, it basically boils down to you knocking them back at a much faster velocity than before. You can yeet them across the screen. For Symmetra, her photon projector charges up 20% faster. That is all on the live servers, but then of course we have the stuff that's on the PTR, which starts with Bastion. His configuration recon ammo has been increased from 25 to 35. The weapon spread has been decreased when firing up to 33% for his sentry mode. For Brigitta, her shield bash no longer goes through barriers. It's a little bit broken at this point, but we kind of get the idea that they want. Doomfist rising uppercut, the loss of air control duration has been lowered to 0.6 seconds, and the seismic slam maximum range has been decreased from 20 to 15 meters. McCree's Peacekeeper for Thunderhammer does 10 more damage from 45 to 35 per shot. Soldier's Tactical Visor no longer has Helix rockets auto-target enemies, bit of a weird one, but we'll get back to that. And lastly, Torbjorn's Molten Core, the damage increased from 130 to 160 per second whilst ulting. So they are the changes. Let's go through one by one how this will impact the game, starting with the winners and Reinhardt. This just makes Reinhardt's life so much easier. Both Doomfist can cover less ground, so it means that if you can keep your distance you'll be fine, but also Brigitta can no longer stun you with her shield bash. This was a synergy and an interaction that was used a lot in the World Cup. Kib fusions, you've heard me talk about it quite some time, so these are really solid changes. Reinhardt's life is just a little bit better, but spoiler alert, he is also on the losers list too, for very different reasons, so we'll go over that when we get there. Roadhog, these new changes are great. It's kind of like Hog 1.5, I've heard people calling him. You have the consistency of Hog 2.0 and less bullshittery, and it's also a very strong ability now like Hook 1.0 was, and you can get those kills that you couldn't before. It means that you're a much scarier hero and you can look after your backline for any flankers or anybody that's trying to get in. His ultimate's a bit of a weird one, but I do like the changes with his hook and the damage on his spread. Just makes him a little bit better. Not amazing, he's not going to be a must pick, but I think that we're going to start seeing players that are really good on Roadhog make a return, and that's a very exciting prospect, at least for the next month before people start complaining that he's OP and he needs nerfing. Winston has been played an awful lot more than he used to be. Not only do you have pros playing with the idea of adding Winston into a GOATS comp over Reinhardt, you also have elements of dive coming back, at least Winston Diva running with a Sombra Doomfist in highest metas, and depending on maps you can still just run dive as normal, and Winston isn't really as bad of a pick as he used to be. It's not ideal, but he's on his way up overall, so if you do want to play more of him, just do it. You don't need to play Reinhardt all of the time. I believe in you. You can do it. Now, Ashe was added into the game, and I think she is one of the best heroes to be added in. Not because she's meta or meta-defining. In fact, I don't think she's going to be played an awful lot at the highest tiers, but she just suits so nicely into the game that, honestly, you could forget that she was even added in recently. She just suits how Overwatch was meant to be played, mechanically heavy, has a lot of utility, and a lot of good use, but she isn't like Brigitta, right, where she just changed the meta as a whole, or overly complex and a little bit annoying to get your head around like Wrecking Ball. She's just a nice hero added into the game, fits in perfectly. Again, not the biggest or best hero in Overwatch right now, certainly not the best DPS, but one of the best launches I think we've had of a hero since Anna. So if you want to play and learn more of her, then now's certainly a good time. Bastion had some good changes. I want to put him on this list because Bastion has been at the bottom of the barrel for quite some time. I don't expect that this is going to make him a massive must pick at any stretch, or make him even good enough to run a good portion of the time, but it's nice to see his name on the green side as opposed to the red. I wouldn't necessarily say he's a troll pick, but he's certainly not Soldier 76 Ashe on McCree. We went over Genji in the heroes to play for season 13 because he still is one of the most popular DPS options and nothing has changed. Hell, if these Doomfist nerfs go through, when it comes to a flanker, Genji might make a big appearance. Especially with Ana being very meta right now, the synergy works out quite well. It's not as good as it used to be for Genji, but it's still not terrible. The same could be said for the rest of the DPS, to be honest. People like McCree and Soldier as well recently got buffs, and McCree is getting more, but they're still in a really solid spot, just in a nice way that you can alternate what picks that you want. Fara, I do want to highlight a little bit more simply because she had a lot of changes that were buffs or nerfs, but we have seen Fara in the highest tier at the World Cup and in some other tournaments being played tremendously well against tanks and been very difficult for teams to take out. I would say that it's definitely a buff from what she used to be, but players are still working that out, but I'd say that most of all, players are leaning towards these changes being very positive. Reaper, now an interesting thing that was brought up, I casted the Angry Cup, which was a tournament and a final between Angry Titans and Samsung Morning Stars. This tournament happened right after this patch went live, and both teams agreed to have Reaper disallowed, that you couldn't play him in this tournament, because I guess both of them felt that these changes to Reaper were actually surprisingly good. All I'm saying is don't sleep on these changes. It might not be massive for Reaper, but every little helps, right? He might become a really good pick and just unkillable in a lot of situations. Be very careful, don't write him off just yet. Symmetra got a buff, but I don't again want to add her to this list. I think that she needs more. It's a very awkward hero, just as awkward as she used to be. I did want to highlight that it is a positive change, but ultimately I still would prefer not to see a Symmetra on my lineup. But that's me, I'm not trying to be biased or anything. I just still don't believe in what this hero is capable of just yet. Sombra's done a really good job to sneak away from Blizzard and not get nerfed herself. She was one of those culpable heroes that are making this meta really horrible with the CC, or at least the community is saying, but she's got away scot-free. No changes for her just yet, but never say never. Sombra getting by just fine, so she's on this winners list. Torbjorn, I really like these changes. As I said before, he can do a lot of DPS, can be really good at controlling areas, and let's be honest, he's the perfect hero sometimes in ranks when the enemy team can't get any coordination together, and you can just throw a Torbjorn turret on the payload, for example, and just murder everybody with it. And finally, Mercy. These changes have been deemed as pretty positive by the community. People like EVA, Animetic, Tilly is just examples of well-known streamers and personalities in the community that have gone, hey, these changes are pretty good, they feel pretty nice. So overall, I would say she's in a really good spot. Not amazing, just good, great maybe even. You can play her, you can synergize her with all sorts of different comps. But to be honest, everybody on the support list belongs on this winners list, barring Brigitta maybe, but it's very competitive. You can alternate and differentiate different styles of comps based on what supports you're running. Very competitive. If you want to play Zen all the time, you can do. If you want to play Ana all the time, you can do. Granted, there's some synergies that don't really work as well as others, depending on map and game mode, but I would say that all supports, this has been the most balanced that they've been for some time. Now let's go over the losers that I want to go over in a bit more detail. As I said, my voice is currently dying, so I do want to blast through these fairly quickly. We start with Brigitta. She is going to be on the end of some nerfs for quite some time, I believe. Even with these changes, I still think we're going to see Brigitta on the PTR with nerfs, try to bounce her down to the point where she doesn't get played an awful lot. Players are really comparing this to the Mercy meta with how long she has been in this game and dictating the meta with Goat's Comp. Remember that the whole composition revolves around the Brigitta. You get rid of her, like delete her from the game like some people want, Goat's Comp will go away. Quad Tank might come back, but that's beside the point. I'm not saying that Brigitta should be deleted, but I do think she's going to be on the end of more nerfs to the point where she is a shell of the person that she used to be. That's my own personal opinion, but it's safe to say that Brigitta is getting worse and worse, and I feel that Blizzard aren't quite done with these changes. Doomfist, he's on this list because he got nerfed, but also I think the meta is starting to push him out a little bit. Goat's Comp and tanks overall are going to become a lot more stronger with Doomfist getting nerfs. And lots of people prefer Doomfist in this meta because he is a solid counter to stuff like Goat's Comp and tanky compositions. Whether these changes really knock him down quite a bit or not, I guess remains to be seen. But overall, I would say that Doomfist is on this losers list, but he's not much of a loser in comparison to some other people. As I mentioned, Reinhardt is also on the losers list. As I went over at the start of this video, Winston is being played a lot more in that main tank role for even like Goat's Comp. Instead of the Reinhardt, you're having Winston in what people are calling Moat's Comp, Coat's Comp, or Mountain Goat's Comp. We have a video going over that strategy and why it's so good later on this week. But ultimately, Reinhardt is just a hero that does get shat on. There's no other way to go about it. He gets stunned, CC'd. He's not fun to play, so it's no surprise that the pro players are moving away from Reinhardt to go onto Winston. You have less of a shield, sure, but you just get screwed over by CC a lot less. Also, you can dive certain targets, really break up the enemy team. So Reinhardt is a winner, his life is a lot easier, but at this point he's a loser because a lot of the pros and highest tier players are just dropping him in favour of Winston. And finally, this isn't a long list, I just want to highlight Wrecking Ball. Now that Ashe is in the game and Wrecking Ball isn't the latest hero, I have to look back and think, what were Blizzard thinking with this style of character? I absolutely adore him, but it's just not worth the time to get good at him and learn him in a similar way as it was with Ana or Sombra. You could do a lot, you could be a complete disruptor and do a lot of things to the enemy team, but ultimately Winston, D.Va, Zarya, Reinhardt, all of the other tanks now have a much stronger calling in the game and a much more defined role. The Wrecking Ball doesn't really have as much of a purpose. I don't want the little hamster to be thinking of the meaning of life and what his role in the universe is, but right now I'd just like to see some changes to him to make him much more positive, but I don't feel that we're going to see Wrecking Ball changed or altered or buffed in any way until Goat's Comp is well out of this meta. I just feel and look back that this was a missed opportunity from Blizzard. They went a little bit kooky and a bit ridiculous, and I feel that's one of the reasons why Wrecking Ball hasn't been touched. He was a very controversial hero from Blizzard's standpoint. Lots of the devs didn't like making him or thought that he was a bit too silly for the game. So it comes as no surprise that he's sort of been left and forgotten about, like Wheezy on the shelf of Toy Story 2. Can't help but feel really disappointed in this, to be honest. But that is my big winners and losers list. I really wanted to keep this nice and short, so sorry for rambling. I really wanted to go over some heroes in detail. But if you do have any questions or any counterpoints, do put them down in the comments. I'll be sure to answer any questions or go over in detail a few more of these heroes and why they're on either the winners list or the losers list. But right now, my voice and my nose is killing me, so I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good weekend. Take care. We'll see you then.